Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel for another Elite 11 team reveal. We've got Andrew Neave back on the channel to look ahead to Game Week 8 and look back on Game Week 7. We've also got fascinating insight into whether or not Havertz is better with or without Odegaard. We're taking a look at the stats over the last 4 game weeks. Lots and lots to get into. So guys, without further ado, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all had a great Game Week 7 after many of us suffered through wildcards previously. But we're looking forward, not backward, and great to have Andrew back on the channel. Andrew, mate, how's it going? Good to have you back, mate. How's your season progressing?
Very well, Tom. Thanks very much. It's good to finally be on after having a half decent game week. So yeah, I'm quite happy. You
Well,
can
we.
kind of see that the rank history there is kind of up and down, a little bit yo-yo, which
Mhm.
yeah, I kind of have a good week, then a bad week, then a good week again. But I think this season's going to be. I think we're going to have to get used to that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's just simply because of the spread of players that we can have. If you've got one of, you know, Salah or Saka or Haaland or one of the premiums, Palmer, then you're likely not going to have two of the others. And some weeks they're going to do well, some weeks they're not. So it's going to be a lot of up and downs like that, I think.
Yeah, good observations. And I do wonder, obviously still really early in the season, isn't it? So these points and these swings tend to be a bit more marked, don't they, from game week to game week. So it's nice to see at least you joining on an upward trajectory, Andrew. So like we're saying, right, we talked off camera right around the sort of 570k mark and change off the back of a good game week. Happy with that rank right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's a drastic change from last season. I think this season I've had probably 2 or 3 game week ranks inside the top million, where I think I had to wait until about game week 17 or 18 or
That's right.
19 or something ridiculous for my first game week rank in the top million. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that. I think
Yeah.
in the past I've never really paid much attention to the game week rank in those, first 10 game weeks or whatever. But I was always conscious of the fact that by 8, I'd like to be in that top half million. Obviously, if I can be a little closer to top 300,000, then I know I've got off to a pretty good start and I can, use that second half of the season and the planning and the double game weeks, etc., to start climbing up the ranks there. So,
I see.
yeah, I'm quite happy at the moment at yeah, just inside the top 600,000 at
Yeah.
the moment.
Definitely, absolutely, and you had a brutal start to the season as you mentioned last season, but ended strong as well. So still lots and lots of points to play for yourself and for the other elite managers and for everyone watching. Let's take a little look back now at game week 7. So we can see here, Andrew, that you've had a really impressive game week. I want to get straight into that midfield, and apologies, I'll just enlarge your video in a moment, Andrew. But let's talk around that midfield whilst I amend that now. I want to talk around the Mbumo and Johnson Eze contingent that you've got in the midfield there. All those kind of upper mid price points. Your thoughts around that price bracket and whether or not that complement is how you see long term, whether or not that'll be the ones that you stick with, or are you seeing that there'll be changes for you forthcoming?
I think one of those will end up becoming a premium.
Mm-hmm.
Eze is obviously the one that I'm not too happy having in there at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and would love to have got rid of him this week. But, the news of Diaz not starting meant that he had to stick around for another week. And
I
to be
see.
honest, he's probably sticking around for Game Week 8 for me too, just to give myself a bit of time and a bit more information as to what I should be doing with him and who I want to move him on to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that one of those will be moving up to a likely a Palmer or Foden if he impresses in the next game
Okay.
week.
Okay.
So I've kind of left that option open there. I've got about 1.8 in the bank at
Yeah.
the moment. So um, with TAA in the background there as my sort of cash cow in case I do want to, bump one of those guys up. Johnson came in for me this week.
Nice.
He was a transfer in for Diaz.
Yeah.
I I'm still on the fence a little bit about that one, just in terms of losing Diaz. I think great asset, obviously, and I think if you are one of the managers who decided to stick with him this week, I don't think there's anything bad about doing so. Yes, he lost out in the points this week, but I wouldn't think twice about having him going forward.
Okay.
There's obviously going to be that worry about his minutes, which is ultimately the reason why I thought, okay, you know what, I'll move on. But I was also keen just to get in on the act of that Spurs game. I thought there was going to be a lot of goals in that one. Turned out there was. I thought it'd be the other way around. I thought it'd be 3-2 Spurs, but without having Solanke this week and a lot of very good managers who did have Solanke, I didn't really want to go into this game week without any Spurs attack. So that was probably the reason why it tipped it for me, and also meant that I could just cash a little bit of money, put that in the bank, and use that towards upgrading an Eze or perhaps a Joao Pedro going forward.
Yeah, well, we'll talk around your Game Week 8 plans in just a moment. Just before we do that, Andrew, I wanted to ask you around Lewis at the back there for Man City as well. Looks like a great asset with his price point being what it is, and where he's kind of playing in the Man City side as well, because of the various absenteeism as well. How do you see this Man City side, though, from a wider FPL context right now? I think Haaland will come on to when we talk around the stats a little bit later, but do you think he's the only viable route into the City side right now outside of Erling Haaland? Which feels curious, strange to ask, but how are you seeing Man City as an FPL collective right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think he probably is the safest bet, just from a funds point of view, just simply because you don't really want to be pouring money into the City side at the moment without knowing who it is that you can really get in. Vardiol just he obviously pops up with some big scores every now and then, but with Lewis in the side, it does hurt his output. So
Yeah,
he just seems like a slightly safer option. I think we obviously need to take it with a pinch of salt. Lewis is not going to start every game. I think when there are those games where the one-on-ones are going to be a little bit tougher for him, and they need that strength in the back line, you are going to see Walker playing. But it was quite interesting seeing Walker play this week I think they both started this game week, because as far as I can remember, I didn't actually watch the game myself, but I think that he was brought in because of the likes of Adama Traore there. And so interesting seeing the both of them play there. But I think
yeah,
Lewis is he's good if you have him, but I wouldn't stress too much if you don't, just simply because there is obviously that risk of minutes with him. And they just don't look like they can keep a clean sheet at the moment either. They didn't seem too bothered about keeping a clean sheet, if that
no.
makes any sense. I watched some of the highlights, and yeah, they didn't seem too fussed about being a cohesive unit at the back, and it was just a case of, okay, well, we'll just go try score more goals than the
Right,
opposition
exactly.
does.
Totally agree. That was my observation watching them as well. That was that kind of, we will score more than you, and not be too concerned about goals going the other way, which obviously doesn't speak to Lewis's value. But when he's playing in an attacking role anyway, it kind of doesn't matter at that price point, does it? Yeah, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
let's move it on, Andrew, and look ahead. Obviously, Game Week 8's quite far in the future, so we'll caveat this with the usual bunch of factors to consider in terms of things that will happen over the next however long. But let's take a look at your bus team ahead of Game Week 8, and we can start to talk around your early transfer plans. Okay, Andrew. So I want to start with Konsa here. So he limped off early, didn't he? Sort of 12 minutes in with what looked like a hamstring injury. So rotten luck for owners there. Let's assume he's out. Let's talk around your transfer plans ahead of Game Week 8. How are you seeing it shaking out, mate?
it's a good question, because I'm not actually 100% sure at this stage. I think at
Mm,
the moment, if I was pressed for an answer, I'd probably say I'm going to roll. I only have the one free transfer. I've got about 1.8 mil in the
yeah.
bank, and the guys that I am looking at bringing in are just slightly out of reach with having that 1.8. So I think someone like an Eze to Foden, or a Palmer, or Joao Pedro is obviously another worry that I have there on
Challenge,
the
yeah.
bench. I'm 0.3 short of going straight from him to Solanke. So, but the team looks pretty good for Game
It
Week 8. I
does.
think if Konsa is out, I don't mind the deputies that I've got sitting there on the bench. Greaves can come in for that home game against Everton. Ipswich haven't looked too bad, to be perfectly honest. So
Nope.
I think if all goes well over the next 2 weeks and the international break, I'd be quite happy leaving it for a week and just giving myself the opportunity of 2 free transfers in game week 9 so that I can
Very nice.
downgrade someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold and have my pick as to who I want. Because if Trent goes down to a 4.5, for example, we've got Fulham, we've got some decent fixtures coming up, although I've already got Robinson there, so won't be looking at them. But someone like Nate Nori is quite a fun asset to have, and Wolves finally get their decent run of fixtures. Not this coming week, I think the following week. It is game week 9 or so that they start looking like an option. So I'd like to keep my options open. I think obviously the 2 free transfers would make things a whole lot easier to do that, because there's a number of people that I have an eye on. Solanke up front is someone that I don't have. A lot of wildcard sixes obviously went that way. I brought in Havertz, I think it was last week, and more than happy having Havertz, but it is a little bit of a worry not having Solanke when a lot of the good managers do, and seeing how well Spurs are looking in attack, which is obviously the main reason I brought Johnson in this week, just to make sure that I can get in on the act there. So
Yeah.
I think I'd like to give myself a little bit of time just to see what the injuries are like to Konsa, what the injury is like to Joao Pedro, and give myself the option in game week 9 to kind of go with a number of different options.
Yeah, it sounds like it's sort of consistent with your management style of waiting for more information before you make any decisions, Andrew. There, so I'm not shocked by that. Seems eminently sensible. Joao Pedro's proving to be a bit of a problem, isn't he, for owners? I am one myself as well in terms of the extent of this injury. Let's say that we get some clarity and there is a need to move him on, but for managers who aren't in a position of having money in the bank and are looking for a more of a sideways move there, what do you think about the prospects of Raul Jimenez? We're coming on to talk about stats momentarily. Him and or Chris Wood, I guess, are the obvious picks. Do you have someone in you'd recommend for people in that situation? Do you like either of those options, or is there somebody else that I haven't considered?
Yeah, absolutely. It's those two and Cunha, who I quite
Cunha.
like too.
Okay, yeah,
I think
nice.
Cunha just a little bit more expensive at about
Yeah, a little bit more.
6.5, I think. He's, as I said, obviously the Wolves fixtures are really nice from game week 9 onwards. And he's also a player I just really enjoy watching. The way he took that goal against Aston Villa, the mistake that they made for their sort of, I say consolation goal, was obviously the first goal of the game, but he's just a fantastic striker of the ball, and I think he looks really, really sharp. So I'd like to consider him.
Like
It
it.
really just
Yeah.
that forward role really just depends on whether I decide to go Solanke or not, or
Yeah.
keep it a little bit cheaper and push a bit more money into that midfield. But Jimenez, yeah, really, really good at the moment too. The last time we chatted, I wasn't too keen on Fulham actually, and I
It's
need to kind
true.
of put my hand up there and say I got that one wrong, because they have looked very, very good. I thought with the tougher fixtures they've had in the last 3, I thought they'd fall off a bit, but they haven't at all. They've really impressed, and the likes of Raul Jimenez have looked very, very good. So someone I will certainly be considering going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, we'll come on and look at the stats in a moment, guys, as well. It's probably a good time to remind you as well, if you haven't already, to head over to fantasyfootballfix.com and you can subscribe and get your push notifications for our elite managers as they tinker through their teams ahead of the game week 8 during the international break. You can follow their manager blog thoughts as well and get all of their information cascaded to you as they change their teams. So alongside that, of course, you can do stats comparisons, which will feed in nicely to our next slide. I think the Fulham observation one is an interesting, because defensively they've looked decent as well, haven't they? And they've got some options there, with Robinson's kind of the obvious pick there, but Anderson was a good signing as well. So there may be some options there as well, Andrew. I think that's probably an opportune time now for us to move on and take a look at our stats roundup, guys, ahead of game week 8. Okay, so we've been doing this for the last several game weeks, guys. So Just a reminder, these stats are the last 4 game weeks, and they are looking at average over the per 90 minutes, I should say. So just looking at the last 4 game weeks. And I was saying to Andrew off camera, guys, that in the XG column, top left table, this is the first time that Erling Haaland has not featured in the top 5. So he is not one of the most obvious or most apparent picks in terms of XG over the last 4. Andrew, what are you seeing here when you're looking through these statistics? Let's leave the XG conceded team metric till last. In terms of individuals, is there anyone who's leaping out here that you're particularly interested in, or who's giving you pause?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously quite interesting not seeing Havertz in there. The expected goals, this is obviously over the last 4 game weeks, I think it is. And I think KDB and Rodri missing is big for them. I think what he does have on his side, though, is fixtures going forward. I think, City have obviously got a really nice run of attacking fixtures over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 game weeks. So, you'd expect him to come right there. It's and I don't have the balls to get rid of him, to be perfectly honest. So, not with those fixtures coming up. So I wouldn't stress too much. It is just interesting not seeing him in there on the top 5.
He's still getting shots though, isn't he, Andrew? Sorry to cut across you, but he's still in the shots and shots in the box,
absolutely.
isn't he? So maybe the quality of the chance isn't quite what he would be expecting, but he's still getting volume of shots. So I don't think there's anything to be unduly worried about at this stage.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think as a new Johnson owner, I'm obviously quite happy seeing the shots in the box there. Obviously really nice having him in there, and quite happy to have him for the next good 4 or 5 game weeks. They look pretty decent. And I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but having him next week again, well, not next week, in 2 weeks' time against West Ham, you'd expect more there. So
I would expect more. You would expect more. We'd all expect
there.
more. Definitely. Yeah, no qualms about admitting that at all. And I need to give you kudos as well, actually, Andrew, because the last time you were on, you actually, or maybe the time before actually, but certainly in a previous video, you were the elite manager to call out Jackson at Chelsea as well as a viable prospect several game weeks ago. And that, you've called yourself out for the Fulham admission, but conversely, I need to say well done on the Jackson recommendation, because he was not a name in the FPL parlance at that time, and he certainly has been since, hasn't he? Is he still someone that interests you, or are you thinking with Cole Palmer taking the plaudits, it's difficult to back the double up with Chelsea offensively?
Yeah, it's. I still think he's a decent option to go for. It doesn't really work so much with my side, just simply because I've got Havertz, Haaland, and that extra spot. I'd likely, if I'm going that particular price range, I'd probably lean towards Solanke, given the fixtures that are coming up, as opposed to Chelsea, who've got a slightly harder run of fixtures in the next 3 or 4. So, but as you can see there, obviously the expected goals, the shots that he's having, the shots in the box, he's right up there, and a very, very decent option. It was game week 4 that when I wildcarded, I think.
That's right.
That I was thinking about sort of bringing him in, and he obviously had a really good, I think 4 and 5, not so much over the last sort of week or 2, or sorry, in 6 yaps, he smashed it there too, didn't he? So
he certainly did.
Yeah, it's mixed bag. I think. I was thinking about this just before jumping on with you here, and how obviously I went a little bit different with the wildcard strategy in game week 4 compared to everyone else going. Well, when I say everyone else, the sort of other elite managers have all gone in game week 6. It's all ended up pretty even at the end of the day. I've kind of haven't really changed rank, and the teams are very, very similar, which I anticipated at the end of the day. The reason going early in game week 4 was to get on those players that I figured everyone would have in game week 6. And that's pretty much how it's worked out. My team is, I mean, there's probably 1 or 2 players that are slightly different with Eze and my side compared to a Semenyo, who are in most other elite managers' teams. So I didn't get that head start, that sort of jump on everyone that I was hoping for between game weeks 4 and 6. And unfortunately, it just came down to a bit of tough luck again with injuries. I wildcarded straight into 2 forward injuries with Joao Pedro and Vissa. I went early on Vissa, and both of them injured in game week 4. So it's forced my hand a little bit, just what I've had to do over the last couple of weeks. So A little bit annoying, and obviously Konsa picking up an injury now too is, you know, the third injury since game week 4. So frustrating, but even par, you know, I haven't lost ground in any way. So, you know, quite happy, I suppose.
I think we've probably got a sample size enough now for me to say I do feel like you've been pretty unlucky with your transfer decisions being almost immediately followed by injuries to the personnel that you've brought in over the last 18 months or so, Andrew. I don't know whether or not that's something that you've battled with for longer than that, but it does seem to be a tendency. So hopefully that can stop pretty soon. Let's just talk around. So we've mentioned in dispatches already around Fulham as well. So let's talk around the XG conceded. I found this really enlightening, this team metric that we do. Top 2 defences there, XG conceded over the last 4 game weeks. We've got Aston Villa and Fulham, respectively, Andrew. And then we've got Raul Jimenez in the terms of expected FPL points as well. So, I mean, you were already... Are you trebled up? I think I remember you had Rodgers, Watkins, and the injured Konsa from Villa, so you're well covered there. But any opportunity for any of the Fulham boys to find their way into the team outside of Robinson?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got Robinson in at the moment, and quite happy that I've got him there. He's not someone that I'd planned on starting over the next sort of 1 or 2 game weeks, but more than happy having him come in for Konsa, for example, if he does end up injured. But obviously seeing that goals conceded stat over there with Aston Villa being up the top there, I'm hoping Konsa, the injury there isn't too bad. And, you know, luckily we've obviously got the international break now. He'll have 2 weeks to kind of recover it. It didn't look too bad. It looked like a little tweak to either the hamstring or the groin, but it wasn't writhing around in pain or anything. So who knows? It could just be 2-3 weeks. Someone I can hopefully just stick on the bench and bring on the likes of a Robinson or Greaves those next game week or 2. So quite happy having the Fulham defence there, and Jimenez is someone I have an eye on. There is actually someone else in the Fulham team who's really, really impressed, and
go on.
Another budget enabler who might be quite good to think about if you are perhaps a Semenyo owner and thinking about moving off Semenyo with the tougher fixtures coming up over the next 3 or 4 game weeks.
Hit me.
Adama Traore has been very, very good. I know we've seen this before, and I suppose we know how this plays out. He's looked very, very lively, but I watched him live at Craven Cottage it must have been game week 4, I think. They played West Ham. And he caused them all sorts of trouble. I mean, that game against City was pretty entertaining, seeing him leave Walker in the dust. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Doesn't happen a lot, does it? No.
He's looked very good, and I think there's a haul coming up for him. It's just whether you can time it. But with the fixtures that are coming up for them, you would think it's likely to be in the next 3 or 4 game weeks. I think they've got Aston Villa next, but the next 3 after that are Everton, Brentford, Crystal Palace, and then Wolves after that at home too. So those next 4-5 game weeks for Fulham look really good, and I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Jimenez, just simply because Joao Pedro is obviously an issue for me. So he's one of the front runners who can come in for me, perhaps not this coming game week, but from game week 9, if I decide not to go with Solanke. But Traore is, someone to keep an eye on. I think he could be a good differential for anyone who is looking at another budget enabler and someone who is always going to start. And I think he's around about Rodgers' price, isn't he? I think he's at 5.1 or something. So,
I love the shout.
A little crack.
I love it. I love the shout. I mean, we've been doing the video for a long time on the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel and talking around this in FPL circles since Middlesbrough days, Aston Villa days with the Adama Traore. We're waiting for that haul, but he's definitely due, and he's a fun player to watch. I love the shout, Andrew. That's definitely one to think about, and I really like the look of this Fulham team. Good on them so far for sure, and Villa likewise as well, doing a great job under Emery, aren't they? Now, guys, we promised this at the beginning of the video, but we do have a little hot topic video here, and there was obviously a lot of conversation in the FPL discourse around whether or not Kai Havertz would be worth owning with Martin Odegaard's injury. And Andrew asked us to pull this together, so we've got some stats to show the impact on Kai Havertz's output since Odegaard's injury. So let's take a little look. Now, Andrew, when I heard that this was the topic that you wanted to converse when we were planning for this video, I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but I was not expecting to see these types of numbers. So the floor is yours, my man. This was your shout. This is your analysis is on screen here, or the analysis taken from fantasyfootballfix.com. You've got our radar on the right there, along with the more traditional stats, but I'm enlightened by this. It seems like this has gone the other way, right? He seems like an even better pick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I haven't seen a whole lot of, and obviously was quite interested just to dig into a little bit and see, what my plans might be like longer term with Havertz. And it's not so much just to kind of say he's a better option with or without. I think it's more just to have a look at the fact that he's a great option both with and without. And you can see obviously with the numbers there, he hasn't suffered at all with regards to not having Odegaard in the side with him. I take, bear into mind, this is obviously stats that are pulled up from game weeks 1 to 6. It doesn't include the game against Southampton. His stats are obviously better after the game against Southampton. His expected goals now, I think I just had a very quick look. On the Fantasy Football Fix website, the expected goals there have gone up to 3.79. He's had 18 shots, 8 shots on target, 16 in the box. That's obviously all gone up after that game against Southampton, which you would expect, obviously, against a side like Southampton. But I think another thing we need to keep in mind here is that one of the games that he has played without Odegaard was the Man City game, where he didn't see the ball for half a game, literally. So I was quite, like you said, very surprised to see the numbers there, and the fact that he's really hasn't been hurt at all without having Odegaard in the side. There's obviously going to be that odd game week where Jesus comes in and he perhaps gets pushed back a little bit, but I think that's more likely to happen when they play a slightly weaker opposition. And if they are playing a weaker opposition, like we saw against Southampton this week, Havertz is still going to get those opportunities. He's still going to be pushing up the pitch a lot more than he would perhaps if he was getting, dropped into the midfield against a slightly better team. His average, there's heat maps that you can have a look at, and average positions on the Fantasy Football Fix website. That really hasn't changed at all in terms of his average position. I was expecting to see him perhaps to have dropped back a little bit, without having Odegaard in the team, but he hasn't at all. If anything, he's just shifted slightly right, but it's really no different at all. And it's one of my favorite things to do with the stats that you can bring up on the website, and being able to pick players when they are playing with and without. I think last season, having a look at Matoma and how Matoma played with the Stupinan in the side, brought up a lot of really, really interesting things there too. So it's a fantastic tool to have, and I'm not sort of putting this out there to say that, when Odegaard comes back, he's going to be a worse option. It was more just, if you are a manager thinking about the likes of Havertz versus Solanke versus Jackson, and you're worried about going with him because there is this narrative that seems to be out there that he is worse off without Odegaard in the side, the stats don't back that up. And I think he's as good an option with or without. He's in the side to score goals. That is his job. And he's playing for a team that's obviously, chasing for the title. So I think he's a great option going forward. Someone I'm quite happy to have in my team. Arsenal have 1 or 2 tougher fixtures coming up, but you can see them scoring in any game really. And if they are, you expect them to be right up in there in the points.
Here. Great analysis and really, really interesting observations, Andrew. And in terms of those tougher fixtures, I'd argue that they're tougher for the people playing them, right? Out there seem like a terrific side to me, playing well in the Champions League, running Man City close away. yeah, they're going to take some beating this season, I think. So yeah, love it.
Yeah.
All right, mate, that's been enlightening. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to cover this week before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think so. I think just sort of personal observations from this week and from the last couple of weeks actually is just around not doing the things I wanted to do because I was just a little scared because they were a bit against the grain. I thought long and hard about captaining Havertz this week over Haaland, and obviously in hindsight, really wish I had, but didn't just because didn't have the balls to sort of go against the grain there. There's a few other things that I wish I'd done previously. So I think there's just a few learnings for myself and for anyone else out there. That's it's you don't have to obviously just go the way that everyone else is. There's obviously a lot of talk, and we're in this big bubble on social media with the Twitterverse. I think what I do going forward is just kind of try to listen a little bit less to that and go the way I'd like to go, even if that does seem a little bit riskier. If I wasn't listening to everything that was going on in Twitter, then it wouldn't be risky for me, would I? Wouldn't know that anyone else wasn't going that way, and it could pay off for me.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And I've heard that a lot from guests over the years as well. And one thing that sticks in my mind, I say it sticks in my mind, I forget which guest it was who said it, but they observed that a way they like to manage is they make the decision at the end of the game week that's just concluded. And then I think it may have been Mark, they say, does anything happen in the intervening week to change their mind? And if not, they stick with their initial gut. And I quite like that philosophy.
I've mentioned something to you previously about that. It'll be interesting if Mark has done that, because I do that with my captaincy. At the end of, say, game week 7, going into game week 8, I'll go, okay, I'm sticking my captaincy on this particular person, and unless something drastic happens, I'll kind of stay with that regardless of what social media is saying, etc. So yeah, it's been tough. It's been a learning curve for me, just being a part of the fantasy football fixed team too.
Sure.
Getting that team out there. Obviously, the season before last didn't have that sort of that Twitter handle or anything like that, and I was only accountable to me. So making those decisions were quite simple, and it's psychologically it just changes things a little bit, just in terms of going, well, hold on, everyone else is going this way, am I actually making the right choice? So I think you've just got to try back yourself a bit, even if your thinking is slightly different.
Yeah, you do. Sometimes easier said than done, but I'll be watching with interest to see whether or not you're able to make good on that over the course of the next few game weeks. Andrew, it's been great to get you back on, mate. Thanks ever so much for your time as ever, and I look forward to talking to you again in a few weeks. Guys, if you haven't already, do please smash a like on the video on your way out. Do leave a comment down below if you've got any questions or observations to Andrew about his analysis about Kai Havertz or any of the other points that we've talked about. And we'll be back with you after the international break. Gutted, we've got another one, but I think there's only one more to go before the new year, so not long to go, guys. But I'll be back with you soon. Have a great break, and I'll see you after Game Week 8. Take care. Bye-bye.